Who said anything about safe? Course he isn't safe, but he's good. He's the king, I tell you. You know, this absolutely incredible paradox from C.S. Lewis in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe just perfectly captures this massive tension in theology. Like, what does it actually mean to be completely secure in the hands of God if he isn't, well, safe by our typical human definitions?
Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a really fascinating dynamic today, our deep, natural human desire for safety and comfort, and we're putting that right up against God's ultimate provision. It's a journey that reveals so much about human nature, so let's just jump right in.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. First will be defining God's rules. Second, looking at the idol of security. Third, praise versus grumbling. And finally, number 4, the Word became flesh.
All right, part 1, defining God's rules. What does God require?
To really wrap our heads around why security is such a massive issue for us, we have to start with the incredibly dense expectations God originally laid out. Take the Hebrew word mitzvah. It's the general term for a commandment. But listen, this isn't just a good deed or a loose guideline. This specific term refers to the comprehensive, total body of laws given directly by the Lord. It's the whole shebang.
And the law gets even more granular than that. Consider the contrast between chak, which is a statute referring to strict prescriptions, regulations, or even laws of nature, and mishpat, which represents a formal, binding judicial verdict. So God's law wasn't just a set of helpful suggestions, it was this heavy, precise, all-encompassing legal system that demanded nothing short of absolute perfection.
Okay, moving right along to section 2, the idol of security, our search for shalom. Now, because humanity basically constantly fails to perfectly keep those strict rules we just talked about, we desperately try to create our own safety. David H. Lang explores this brilliantly in his academic thesis. He points out that our God-given desire for shalom, which is this beautiful Hebrew concept for wholeness and peace, well, it often morphs into a really destructive idol. He observes that modern Christians can actually seek safety and self-preservation to a truly idolatrous extent. Long references Henri Nouwen's parable of the fearful hoarders to really bring this to life, and it's so vivid. Imagine a group of people totally struck by the fear of the unknown. What's their immediate reaction? Let us start collecting food and knowledge so that we are safe and secure when a crisis occurs. So they just hoard resources, right? They refuse to share with those who are actively dying outside, all in this desperate, frantic bid to protect their own future.
And this parable perfectly illustrates the trap we build for ourselves. As their fear grew, these hoarders built higher and higher walls, eventually topping them literally with explosives. But instead of feeling safe and secure behind their armed walls, they found themselves trapped in the prison they had built with their own fear. It just shows that idolizing our own self-preservation, it never births love. It only builds a prison.
If we zoom out and look across a timeline of history, our approach to security has shifted so dramatically. Think about the early church. Believers routinely risked death and martyrdom for the gospel. Then jump to the Reformation, where figures like Martin Luther risked literal execution just to stand by God's word. But as we move into the modern church era, there's a really distinct shift. The focus moves way away from personal risk and heavily towards seeking security through cultural policy and personal comfort.
That brings us to part 3, praise versus grumbling, the Exodus example.
Let's look at the biblical narrative to see exactly how quickly we lose trust when our immediate security is threatened. Over at the Red Sea, the Israelites are joyously praising God's glorious triumph. I mean, they literally just watched an entire army get swallowed by the sea. Yet a mere 3 days later in the wilderness, what are they doing? They're grumbling and complaining because the water they found is bitter. 3 days, guys. Their immediate comfort vanished, and that grand praise instantly evaporated.
A commentary from Calvary Chapel hits the nail on the head here. It says, praise for God flows out of a grateful heart, but we need to be on guard, because our praise can easily and quickly turn to grumbling. It really begs a direct question. Does your praise quickly turn to grumbling the second you feel unsafe or lack comfort? It's a pretty challenging reflection on our own human nature, isn't it?
And finally, part 4, the Word became flesh, the divine solution.
So, because we can't perfectly follow those technical laws from earlier, and because we are just constantly trapped by our own fear and grumbling, we desperately need a rescue plan. Our sources outline 7 incredible reasons Jesus came in the flesh to be exactly that solution. He came to reveal the Father, be our example, break the curse, fulfill the law, shed his blood, carry our sin, and become our high priest.
You see, God couldn't conquer our sin from the outside without destroying us in the process, so the incarnation was basically a necessary inside job. He literally took on human flesh to fix the human condition.
Let's connect this right back to where we started. Remember the heavy demands of the mitzvah and mishpat? The law demanded absolute perfect fulfillment and a strict penalty for any transgression. But Jesus fulfilled this. How? By perfectly living up to those impossible standards himself, and then becoming the required sacrifice. He stepped right in to pay the massive penalty that we simply couldn't pay.
This brilliant reality is captured so perfectly in Hebrews 9:12. With his own blood, he entered the most holy place once for all time and secured our redemption forever. Taking on flesh was an absolute necessity so that Jesus could shed his blood to win our true, permanent security. Because of that, we don't have to act like those fearful hoarders, building armed walls to protect ourselves, right? Because our redemption is already completely secured.
Which leaves us with this final, really important thought to end our explainer today. Where do you find your ultimate security? Do you trust in the prison-like walls you build to protect your own comfort? Or do you trust in the high priest who perfectly understands your weaknesses and has already secured your future? Really reflect on that today.